What if space itself is not empty? There is something you have never been without, something so constant, so omnipresent, so fundamental to every moment of your existence, that you have almost certainly never stopped to question what it actually is. You move through it, you exist inside it. Every object you have ever seen, every distance you have ever crossed, every place you have ever been, all of it happened within something you have never examined. Space. Not outer space. Not the space between galaxies. But space itself. The invisible, apparently empty medium in which everything exists. The background against which all of reality unfolds. The container, if it even is a container, that holds every particle, every force, every structure in the known universe. And space, it turns out, is one of the most misunderstood things in existence. Because when you look at it carefully, when physics looks at it carefully, what appears to be the simplest, most passive, most obviously empty thing in the universe reveals itself to be something extraordinary. Something that bends, something that stretches, something that vibrates, carries energy, and participates actively in the events that unfold within it. Something that is not a background at all, but a dynamic, physical entity in its own right. Something that may not be empty in any meaningful sense of the word. It begins with a question that seems almost too simple to ask. What is between two objects? Take two particles separated by a distance. Between them there appears to be nothing, just empty space. But modern physics tells us that this apparent emptiness is filled with fields. The electromagnetic field, the gravitational field, the Higgs field, the quantum vacuum we explored in the video on nothingness. These fields are not metaphors, they are real physical structures that permeate all of space, that transmit forces between objects, that give particles their properties and their mass. Remove them, and the universe as we know it ceases to exist. Space is not a void. It is a medium. A medium so complex, so layered, so full of invisible structure that the closer you look, the more there is to find. And then Einstein showed us something even more fundamental. Before Einstein, space was understood the way Newton understood it, as an absolute, fixed, unchanging stage on which the drama of the universe played out. Objects moved through space, but space itself did not move, did not change, did not respond to what happened within it. It was the ultimate passive background. The ultimate empty container. Einstein destroyed that picture completely. In general, relativity, space, or more precisely space-time, is not a fixed background. It is a dynamic physical field that responds to the presence of mass and energy. Matter tells space how to curve. Space tells matter how to move. The two are not separate. They are aspects of a single, unified living geometry that is constantly changing in response to everything within it. Gravity, in this picture, is not a force at all. It is the curvature of space. When the Earth orbits the Sun, it is not being pulled by an invisible force reaching across empty space. It is following the straightest possible path through a curved space-time, a geometry shaped by the Sun's enormous mass. The curvature is so gradual, so smooth, that from the Earth's perspective, it feels like a straight line. But from outside, it is a curve, an orbit. A path defined entirely by the shape of space itself. And space can do more than curve. It can ripple. In 2015, a century after Einstein predicted their existence, gravitational waves were detected for the first time. Ripples in the fabric of space-time produced by two black holes colliding over 1 billion light-years away. The disturbance traveled across the universe at the speed of light, and when it reached Earth, it briefly stretched and compressed space itself by a distance smaller than 1/10,000th the diameter of a proton. The most sensitive instruments ever built, interferometers with arms 4 kilometers long, detected it. Space had moved. Not objects in space, not particles traveling through space, space itself. And that changes everything about how we understand what space is, because something that can curve, that can ripple, that can stretch and compress and carry energy across the universe is not nothing. It is not a passive background. It is a physical entity, as real as matter, as real as energy, as real as anything else in the universe. But there is something even deeper waiting beneath this. Because if space is a physical entity, then where did it come from? What is it made of? Is it continuous, infinitely divisible? Or does it have a smallest possible unit? A quantum of space, below which the very concept of distance loses meaning. These are questions that physicists are actively wrestling with today. Loop quantum gravity, one of the leading attempts to unify quantum mechanics and general relativity, proposes that space itself is quantized, made of discrete, indivisible units called spin networks, woven together into the fabric of reality at a scale so small it makes atoms look enormous. In this picture, space is not a smooth, continuous background. It is a network, a structure, something built from something else. And if space is built from something, if it has a structure, a grain, a fundamental unit, then the question of what lies beneath that structure is not a question about what is inside space. It is a question about what space is inside of. And this is where physics arrives, once again at the same threshold it has been approaching from every direction throughout this series. Because if space is not fundamental, if it is emergent, built from something deeper, woven together from something that is not itself spatial, then what is that something? What is the ground from which space itself arises? Some physicists have proposed that space emerges from quantum entanglement, that the connections between entangled particles, the invisible threads of quantum correlation that we explored in the video on quantum reality, are literally the fabric from which space is woven. That the geometry of space, the distances, the directions, the structure of the universe, is a kind of map of the entanglement structure of the quantum state of reality. Space, in this view, is not where things are. It is how things are connected. And if that is true, if space is relationship rather than container, connection rather than emptiness, then what you call the space around you is not a void between objects. It is the web of relationships that makes those objects part of the same reality. And perhaps that points at something that goes beyond physics entirely. Because the sense that things are separate, that you are here and the world is out there, that there is a distance between you and everything else, that space is the thing that keeps objects apart, may be one of the deepest illusions of ordinary experience, not in a mystical sense, but in a precise physical sense. At the quantum level, entangled particles have no meaningful distance between them. The connection between them is not mediated by space. It is more fundamental than space. And awareness, the awareness you are using right now to follow these words, has no location in space. You cannot point to where experience happens. You cannot measure the distance between a thought and the thinker. The one who's aware does not occupy a position the way a particle does. Perhaps because awareness is not inside space. Perhaps space is inside awareness, and the distance between you and everything else, the vast, cold, apparently empty expanse that separates one thing from another, may be not a fundamental feature of reality, but something that appears within something far more intimate, far more immediate, far more close than any distance can capture. And in the next video, we will explore one of the strangest phenomena in all of physics: quantum entanglement, the invisible connection between particles that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. The phenomenon that suggests that at the deepest level of reality, nothing is truly separate from anything else.